Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Bar Business Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, and today we are joined by Tim Etherington-Judge, who is the man behind Healthy Hospo and Avallen, which is a spirits company located out of Normandy, France. Tim has a lot of global hospitality experience. He's worked both behind the bar and in bars and restaurants, and also on the distributor side, actually working internationally for Diageo, supporting our industry. And his journey, which I will let him tell because there's no way I could do it justice, but his journey that he has gone through has led him to really focus on two key areas within the hospitality industry, which are mental health and just overall employee wellness and sustainability, which are two topics that unfortunately we really don't get a lot of chance to talk about, that probably across the industry we should be talking about a lot more. So first of all, Tim, thank you so much for being here. And as I mentioned earlier, rather than let me mess up your background, I'll give you the opportunity to fill us in on your story.
Give me the opportunity to mess it up myself. Thanks, Chris. And really excited by the opportunity to speak on your podcast. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep this short because kind of my history is the least important part of what we've got to talk about today. So start at the beginning, I grew up in Cornwall, which is a very rural, touristy area in the UK. It's the only bit of the UK that really has a lot of palm trees and golden sand beaches, if anyone actually believes that. But because it's so touristy, the first jobs you get are in hospitality. So since the age of 14, I've been working in hospitality. And it's taken me all over the world. So starting in Cornwall, then took a big shift out to New Zealand, which is where I really fell in love with cocktail bars and the art of the cocktail. So kind of worked my way up through a series of bars in New Zealand to be a kind of head bartender and running the top bar in Auckland, New Zealand. And in 2009 was the bartender of the year, New Zealand bartender of the year, which is kind of like being the world's tallest hobbit. Because there's not a great scene. At the time, there was a really high quality scene in New Zealand, but there weren't many of us. From New Zealand, shifted over to India. So got an opportunity to go and work at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Mumbai, which is one of the world's great hotels, and just learn hospitality from a group of people who I never thought I would have the opportunity to. I'm not sure if anyone remembers or you remember, but back in 2008, there were a bunch of terrorist attacks in Mumbai. And I think many of us had kind of watched the news, watched it unfold live and heard the stories of the staff at the hotel risking their lives to save their guests. For me, I thought hospitality was putting down a napkin, and a glass of water and eye contact when anyone walked into the bar. And then here was the stories of people like literally risking their lives and jumping in front of bullets to save complete strangers. And I was like, now that's a level of hospitality that I want to go and understand and learn. And I want to go and learn from these people who earn like, $80 a month. They've got so much to teach. So I went out there, spent 3 years in India. That's where I joined Diageo. Had an amazing time in India, traveling across the whole country, fell in love with the place, the people, and especially the food. From India, I jumped across, I stayed at Diageo, but became the ambassador for the luxury ambassador for sub-Saharan Africa. So again, got to travel all across this incredible continent, everywhere from kind of Ghana, Nigeria, across to Kenya and Uganda, down to South Africa, and just fall in love with, I think, a continent that a lot of people don't spend enough time in. And then from Africa, I joined the global reserve team as the global ambassador for a little-known American whiskey called Bulleit. Some of your listeners might have heard of it, which was an amazing job. But basically, a lot of that job was traveling and babysitting Tom Bulleit as we traveled the world together, which was an incredible experience. He's a really charming, lovely gentleman, and a lot of the conversations that we had and the learnings I took from Tom then kind of passed on into my my current brand, Avallen. So yeah, so that's kind of it. And then I guess one of the big reasons why we're talking today is the launch of Healthy Hospo, which is something I never really considered until it happened. So, I had this global ambassador role, which is I think for many people in the industry, or at least bartenders that are listening to this, it's one of the jobs that a lot of bartenders aspire to. You either
Hmm.
aspire to becoming an ambassador, and the global ambassadors are at the top of that tree, or you aspire to becoming a bar owner. Um, and these global ambassador roles in particular have a lot of benefits. But there's also, like with any job, you have a lot of highs, but you also have the lows as well. And after 6 years of traveling the world, and doing 100+ flights a year, um, the terrible nutrition from kind of constantly eating either at airports or room service or in restaurants, the loneliness, which I think is not discussed enough amongst the brand ambassador community, because especially as a global ambassador, because you're constantly traveling on your own, meeting with people that your relationship with them is transitory at best, right? You might see them on a good day, you might see them like 3 or 4 times a year. A lot of people you'll see once and never again. So you've got these kind of always very transactional relationships with them. And the people that you do have strong relationships with, kind of quite often, because you're never at home, you're always traveling, those relationships kind of deteriorate over time. So there's that side of it. Exercise, I'm a big sports guy, so I love to cycle, I love to run, and that gets more and more difficult because you're constantly jet lagged, constantly on the move.
Hmm.
Even though I'd always take my running shoes with me, often I would find myself just too tired,
Sure.
or not just not have the time, because you're constantly going from like airport to hotel to event to hotel to airport, and it all started to take a toll. What was keeping it all together was we had a really, really good team at Diageo up until 2016, when there was the usual corporate restructure, which every company seems to go through every few years.
Yeah.
And the team that was really strong and kind of holding everything together was dismantled. And that was the safety net was taken away. And things came crashing down pretty hard after that. And it all came to a head in November 2016, whilst I was at the Athens Bar Show, where I attempted to commit suicide in my hotel room after a particularly tough kind of few months, and particularly insane amounts of travel, and me just not seeing a future. I think that I'd lost all hope that anything was going to improve, and I was kind of trapped in this place that had become, personally for me, very toxic. And I think it was that lack of hope that led me to that. And so it was with some prescription only, only a packet of prescription only painkillers and a bottle of bourbon that I attempted to end everything. Thankfully, not successfully. But it was also, that was the moment that really gave birth to Healthy Hospo. It was coming through that particular night, and kind of waking up in the morning feeling extremely lonely in that hotel room, and not really knowing where to turn or who to talk to, that I wrote a post on Facebook, kind of that safety net of like talking publicly, but without actually having to talk to anyone in person or respond to anyone. And putting that post out on Facebook in 2016, led to the kind of the birth of Healthy Hospo. It wasn't the response that I was looking for, which was kind of lots of messages and love and support, and I got hundreds and hundreds of those from people. It was all the private messages I got from people who told me their stories. Like friends colleagues, peers in the industry, complete strangers, just reaching out to me and saying, thank you for talking publicly about this. I've been going through something similar, or this is the experience that I've been going through. And back in 2016, no one was talking about health and well-being in our industry.
Mhm.
It was still, and it's very much being brushed under the carpet. We live in this hedonistic industry where everyone's having a good time, and if you're not having a good time, don't talk about that. Just take some more cocaine or have another shot. And so that's what kind of led me to launch Healthy Hospo. It was understanding that I wasn't the only one in the industry suffering, that a lot of people were suffering in silence, and no one was talking about it, no one was doing anything. And what kind of man would I be if I turned my back on the industry? All of the doctors and the therapists I was seeing were saying that, this industry is toxic and it's not good for you. You need to step away from it and go and do something else. And I just, in the back of my mind, I was just like, but I can't, this industry has given me so much. It's allowed me to travel the world. It's allowed me to have incredible experiences. It's made me like my entire friends network. And what kind of man would turn his back on all of that and just walk away? It would be a very selfish guy. So I decided to try and do something to try and change the conversation around health and well-being. And that was the launch of Healthy Hospo back in 2017. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't. But I wanted to start something, and I knew that I had to try at least to change this conversation around health and well-being in our industry. So that was
For sure. And I think that's really important because thinking back and just looking at hospitality as a whole, it's to your point about all the stories you were told. This affects way more people. Bad mental health issues and just the difficulty of the industry affects way more people than I feel like anybody actually realizes.
I would say it affects, at some point, it affects everybody. Everybody in our industry goes through it at some point.
And the thing is, like, if you think about probably the moment that I thought maybe we'd have more conversation was after Anthony Bourdain. Because that was high profile and it really helped point out some of the issues. But one of the things that surprised me was that we had a microscope, if you will, and an intense focus there for a moment. And then it just kind of faded away.
Yeah.
And we had that attention, we had that push to make things better, but nothing actually really got better.
No.
And so with Healthy Hospo, obviously your mission is to help make things better and to promote health and well-being and to help people out. And I think one thing that's really important is that to have this conversation, because there isn't the attention on it that there should be, we got to start by defining the scope of the issue. Because to your point, I really think the issue is much larger than people give it credit for. And so one of the things that I've heard you quote before is that bartending is the 13th most dangerous job in the world.
Yes, that came from the Department of Labor Statistics. That's a US-based stat. And in that report, being a bartender is more dangerous than being a police officer, an on-duty police officer. And police officers have guns, and they're dealing with criminals with guns. And we all know about the gun situation in the US. And yet you're more likely to die at work being a bartender than a police officer. It's just insane. Like, no one should be at risk of dying purely in the service of serving hospitality, of serving drinks, serving food.
Right, because our whole industry is based upon making people have a good time.
Exactly.
And if we're really going out and making sure folks have a great time, and we're providing hospitality and we're helping people celebrate the wonderful things that happen in their life, how then does it come to us where we have these issues? And it's why are we not celebrating along with people, I guess, could be the question.
I think it's, we've had this idea that our industry is the party. and we always need to be at the center of the party. But if you go out partying way too much, it gets tiring.
It
It's
does.
way, and it catches up with you very, very quickly because you're not recovering sufficiently to be able to party that hard. And I think there's also, our industry has this attitude that, and always has done, that we are hedonistic and life is always good. And maybe it's because salaries are not good. We don't work in a very well-paid industry. There's a lot of studies that say it's the worst paid industrial sector in the world. And maybe that's another reason that we keep telling each other that we're having a great time because it makes up for the fact that we don't get paid very much.
Well, that would make sense.
But there's a lot of different aspects, and I don't think I can pick out a single one. It comes from the male toxicity within our industry, the peer pressure. I think the peer pressure is particularly toxic. Just to have another shot to get as drunk as possible. That we share stories of misadventure and outrageous antics, and we champion those. And then I also think there's a big part of the celebration of bullying in our industry through the likes of Gordon Ramsay. I think there's a lot to answer for. The fact that the most famous chef on the planet has built a career out of bullying people with no remorse, right? At least, Anthony Bourdain, in his later years after he kind of left behind being a professional chef and became a TV personality, was very regretful and apologetic about the way that he treated people in kitchens, because he didn't know better. And if he'd gone back, he would have done things differently. Ramsay shows no remorse, continues to build his career on just being a bully. And I think that culture that kind of is well ingrained in our industry, whether it's in restaurants or in bars, takes a long time to change. Especially when the people that we see who are deemed to be the most successful are the ones that are engaging in that behavior.
Absolutely. And another statistic I heard you quote that I had not heard before, but was really interesting to me, and I probably will get this wrong, but something along the lines of working at night is just as cancerous as lead paint.
So the World Health Organization dubbed the night shift working to be a class 2A carcinogen, which is the same class of carcinogen as lead paint. And we all know the dangers of lead paint, and we avoid it in our, we don't use it anymore because it is such a well-known carcinogen. But it all stems down to the lack of sleep, and the amount of the disruptive sleep that we get when we work in hospitality. Because we also have the difficulty or the challenges of we don't have regular shifts, right? If you are, say, a night security officer and you're working night shifts, the chances are you've got the same shift, right? You have to be on, you start work at 11 p.m. and maybe you finish at 7 in the morning, and every day is the same. Okay? So what you can do around that is you can build a sleep schedule. You can build your life around those hours. Because they're consistent, and Monday to Friday you're going to work the same hours. The problem we have in hospitality is no one has consistent hours. Well, very few people have consistent hours. The number of bars and restaurants that I speak to and we work with, that you will get your rota for the following week on Sunday evening. So even you don't even know then what you're working next week, and the chance of you having consistent hours are zero. And that's the problem when you're working these inconsistent hours at night. Your sleep is so disrupted. There's some great work by the world's leading sleep scientist called Matthew Walker into the impacts of disrupted sleep, and it's frightening. It's just 1 hour. So 2 hours of sleep. So going from 8 hours on average to 6 hours. You will reduce the amount of what they call killer cells in your body
Hmm.
that attack cancer cells. So they're like the protective cells that will go and attack cancer and protect you from that are reduced by up to 70%.
That's shocking.
The craziest one of
That
all.
is crazy.
So you live in the US and you have daylight
Hmm.
savings, right? So twice a year we change the clocks for a reason that makes no sense anymore in our modern world.
Right.
But to give you an impact of how important sleep is to our health, every year when the clocks go forward and we lose an hour of sleep, the following Monday, because it happens on like a Saturday night, Sunday, the following day on the Monday, there was a 24% increase in the number of heart attacks
Hmm.
over any other day in the year. And there is a massive increase in the number of car accidents as well.
Hmm.
Because sleep is so important, because when we sleep, we get a form of heart medication. We get our brains go through like a cleansing process, which if we don't get, like slowly, there's a compound called beta amyloid, which builds up in our brain during the day. And then when we sleep at night, that's cleansed through our brain. It's kind of, if you imagine like a city, right?
Hmm.
City during the day, everyone's busy, hustle bustle. There's lots of kind of like garbage builds up on the streets, or the rubbish and the litter. And then at night, the cleaners come in and kind of clean everything. So the next morning, the city is nice and clean again, ready for the day. Imagine that's what our brains are like. But if we're not getting enough sleep, there's not enough of those cleaners coming through to clean the city. And then over time, things just build up and build up and build up. And that chemical beta amyloid has been linked to some horrible diseases like Alzheimer's and other brain degenerative diseases. So sleep is super important. And it's even more important in our industry because we work at night and also because we're drinking.
Hmm.
And alcohol impacts the quality of our sleep. So it affects some of the brainwave patterns as we sleep. So whilst you might be asleep, the quality of that sleep is dog shit. And there's a lot of evidence to show that one of the reasons that a hangover is so bad is because of it's such disrupted sleep. So yes, you're asleep, but you're not getting the quality refreshment and recovery of the brain that we need. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we feel so terrible the night after a big party.
So when you really put all that together, we have a lot that we're struggling against, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're partying, you're drinking, you're not sleeping well, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And for a lot of folks in our industry, that becomes, unfortunately, really a downward spiral,
Absolutely.
right? It just gets worse and worse. And I know one of the things that happens, especially in the bar business, that none of us like to discuss is alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes easier and easier to drink because you're falling further and further in this sleep drink cycle.
Yep.
And so Healthy Hospo, you started essentially to try to find a way to stop all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And to push back against it. And you've been at this, about 6 years, I want to say?
Yeah. Officially 2018 we launched, unofficially
Okay.
late 2017.
Okay. So a little bit over 6 years, and you have created with Healthy Hospo an organization that is not just for the UK or for any
No.
geographic area. You have a international reach,
Mm-hmm.
and you have folks on your team with Healthy Hospo that are literally scattered around the world, whether that's the UK or Italy or New Zealand.
Yep.
So just to fill everybody in a little bit, what's that journey been like in just building that organization out, and kind of a little bit of the back end of that?
It's been both the most rewarding work I've ever done in the industry and some of the most challenging and frustrating at the same time. Because I think a lot of people recognize the need for it. And
Mm-hmm.
when we manage to impact people positively, it's unbelievably rewarding. I've had more than one person come up to me and tell me that the work we do at Healthy Hospo saved their life. and when you get, someone reaching out to you like that, it makes it all worthwhile. And you're like, what, the whole reason, everything that I started and all of the hard work in that one single comment is being a reward.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other side of it, despite all of the people knowing that it's a good thing and we need to do it, the take up of Healthy Hospo and the take up of our work and what we do is painfully slow by the industry. We still ignore our health and well-being, and so many places we speak to or we try and talk to are like, no, it's just we're not interested, or we don't have the money, or it's more important things to do like replace our bar stools. So it's still not taken seriously, which is hugely frustrating because we're not trying to be the fun police. We're not out there like wagging fingers at people. Oh, you shouldn't drink. Oh, drinking is bad. And all the other drugs that our industry is renowned for. Oh, you shouldn't have fun. Oh no, that's a terrible thing. We're trying to take a preventative approach and saying like, if you're smart and you do things the right way and you put your health as a priority, you can have a long and successful and brilliant career in this industry. We try and hold up as inspirational figures, people like Peter Dorelli, who I'm not sure you've come across, but a very famous guy in the bar industry who's like 847 years old now, I think. And he's well into his 80s.
Yeah.
Was the head bartender at the Savoy Hotel for the longest time, has been a bartender for over 6 decades, and is still contributing to this industry at a very high level. Is still going out, is still active, and I'm like, don't you want to be like Peter? If you love this industry so much, as so many bartenders tell me they do, aspire to be like Peter. Aspire to have a long, brilliant, impactful career. And the reason that Peter can do that is because he puts his health first, right? He does yoga every day. He eats a vegetarian diet. He sleeps very well. He chooses when and where he's going to party. So he doesn't go out every night. He doesn't drink every night. But trust me, when he does go out, he will drink all of these young bartenders under the table. He is a monster. But he can do that because he prioritizes his health, right? And he knows when is the right time to go hard and when is the right time to recover and invest in his health. And that's what we try and say to bartenders. And then from the business side of things, and this is where I think I get most frustrated, that business operators don't pick up on this more, is health and well-being is the health and well-being of your staff is the single biggest investment a bar owner can make in their business. And I think I wish that more bar owners and bar leaders within the industry would acknowledge that and pick up on it, because no one ever came to a bar because you have the best menu or you have top of the range fridges or you have nice bar stools. They come to your bar for how your bar makes them feel, or how they feel when they're in your establishment, because people go out for those experiences. One of my old mentors, God rest his soul, Gaz Regan, always told me that the job of a bartender is not to make drinks. It's to make sure that everyone that comes into the bar leaves happier than when they arrived. So the job of a bartender is to make people happy. And if one bartender can make 10 people happy on a night, imagine what 1 million bartenders can do. And 1 million bartenders can change the world, because we can make people happy. You can only make people truly happy on a consistent basis, night after night after night, if you are happy yourself. It's the old analogy of like you can't fill a cup from an empty cup. So you need to make sure that your cup, or your martini glass, or your cocktail shaker, whatever, is full. So then you can then fill other people's. So it's about kind of taking time to make sure that you're flowing full, so then your energy can pass on to others.
So real quick, I want to get your take on why you think bar owners in particular are resistant to these sorts of things. Because I talk to a lot of bar owners, and if you go on Reddit or you look online at what they say, Everyone complains I can't find good staff.
Hmm.
People quit on me all the time. My overhead is too high. And a lot of that is obviously you have a bad culture, and that that is why you're not
Yep.
maintaining employees. But why do we spend so much effort? And I don't know that there's an answer to this, but why do we spend so much effort on I'm losing people, I have to hire people, I can't get the right people, and not effort on maintaining those teams and making sure our people are healthy and keeping them engaged and in the industry?
Uh, that's a great question. So I think part of it is that it's hard to build good culture. Um, it's easier to go out there and treat your staff like shit. Just shout at them, push them, expect more and more from them. Because also that's the way the industry has been shown to us on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's hard to build good culture, and also I think it's not something that has ever been considered before. There's not many people out there running courses on how to look after your people, about leadership and management. Especially in the bar industry, I think a lot of our training, we've become very reliant upon brands delivering training for us. And brands don't care about your business. Brands don't care about the leadership or culture within your business. Brands care about your staff knowing about their brands and selling their brands.
Mm-hmm.
So brands will come out and they'll go like, yeah, let us tell your staff about the history of whiskey and the difference in hemicellulose content between an American oak and European oak and how that impacts the flavor of whiskey. Some shit that the customers in your bar will never care about. And maybe one guy with a very long grey beard that comes in once a year will care about. But you look at those businesses that do really, really well on a consistent basis, they are the ones that invest time and effort and money into their teams.
Mm-hmm.
There's a business here in the UK called Hawksmoor. They have one in New York as well. It's a steakhouse. And they invest an enormous amount of not just money, but kind of energy and time into their teams. Their staff turnover rate is next to zero. Like I know people that have been all of my friends that I know that work there have been there for 10 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
They build their business around their staff well-being. So their recruitment rate costs are super low. Their staff turnover rates are super low. Their customer, I always say to bar owners is the most important customer you can possibly have in your business is the returning customer.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the customer that you have not had to invest any of your marketing budget to bring into your business. That's also the customer that's an advocate for your business because they've had such a good time the first time they came that they've come back. And the likelihood is that they're going to come back with somebody that hasn't been to your business. And they're going to go away and talk about your business to their friends, to the people. And we are all influenced by our close circle of friends. They are the most influential factor in where we go, what we drink, and what we eat. So you want to try and make sure that every single person that walks in through your door comes back again. Not that they spend as much money in your restaurant as possible on that single visit. Because if they walk away feeling like they've been screwed, they're never coming back. And they're going to
Right.
tell their friends that your restaurant but your bar screwed them over. But if they have an amazing time, then they're going to come back and they're going to come back time and time again and they're going to work as an ambassador for your business. It's like free marketing.
Right. It is.
And it's the most impactful form of marketing. It's way more impactful than a social media campaign or,
Mm-hmm.
putting up some adverts around town. So trying to kind of convince owners that take some of that marketing budget and invest it into your staff and into your teams. Because if your teams are healthy, happy, and having a good time, your customers are going to be having a good time. We've all been into bars and restaurants where the staff are flat. They have no energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what's wrong with the staff in here? The vibe in the whole place just sucks. And you're like, do I want to come back in here? It's not giving me the good time that I want when I go out, and I'm paying for to have a good time, right? We're not just paying for the drink. Because if
Right.
we were just paying for the drinks, there would be vending machines everywhere, and there would be no bartenders. We would just go and put money in a machine. And trying to get that across. But I think it's also maybe quite a new concept, or maybe a concept that's been forgotten, and we need to bring it back, and we need to kind of re-understand what hospitality, the genuine word of hospitality, really means. It's not squeezing as much money as physically possible out of our guests from the second they walk in the door. It's providing them with genuine hospitality that's so good that they want to come back because they feel that it's a safe and fun space for them to spend their time and their money in.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that, most people that I have on the podcast and most of the conversations I have, that's the reoccurring theme, right? Is that hospitality has to come up before everything.
Yeah.
And I'm a finance guy. I'm a numbers guy. That's the part of the industry I work in. And so I like to talk numbers, but none of the numbers matter unless you have the hospitality, and you cannot have the hospitality unless you have a happy, healthy team.
Exactly. And if you want to talk numbers, we can look at the cost of recruitment.
Right.
Staff turnover, for most venues, their number one cost center is their staff. Yes, and we were looking at some numbers, and for say an average bartender leaving your business will cost anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. That will cost your business for them leaving through the revenue lost in the business by that person leaving, the recruitment costs of bringing someone back onto the team, the lost revenue from getting that staff member up to speed as they come into the business, like 25 grand. And that's for a junior staff member. If you're looking at senior management or head chefs, you're talking like $100,000 a year in costs. Now, spending like 10% of that cost to keep those people in the business, say you're a head chef,
the math
100,
is simple
100 grand.
there, right?
The math is so simple, right?
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck would you not do it? Like,
well, especially with bartenders, because you think, you have a bar, you have 10 bartenders.
Yeah.
The average turnover rate, at least here in the US, is about 70%. So 7 of those 10 you're going to replace.
70%.
Yeah.
Christ.
And so if that only costs, say that costs you 20 grand a piece, well, that's $140,000 a year wasted training and
exactly.
doing all these things and having a worse customer experience. And you can't grow a business if you have, 7 of your 10 bartenders are different year to year. You're not providing a consistent experience for your guests.
No, exactly.
And a little investment to keep them healthier and happier and to promote their well-being in that regard becomes very, very cheap.
Oh, absolutely. And that doesn't even factor into the calculations, the costs of increased absenteeism through staff with poor health, presenteeism, which is obviously not discussed in our industry enough, of people being at work, but just going through the motions, not giving it their 100%. As a bar owner, when you're paying staff to be at work, you want them to give 100%. If they're only giving 60% because they're tired, they're not feeling good, or they're just generally grumpy about the culture within your business, you're only getting 60% out of them, but you're paying them for 100%.
Right.
So again, you're losing money there, right? And they say presenteeism is a much bigger loss to business than absenteeism. And it's just mad that I can't think of another industry that would tolerate staff turnover rates of 70%. I don't even know how you can stay in business when you're replacing 70% of your staff every year. Like, how is this even possible?
The only way I think it's possible is that we've all gotten used to it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've all accepted it. And rather than, and this is a problem, I think, in the industry as a whole, but a lot of times we run up because we have these small companies, right? Most bars are independents.
Yep.
Most of those places employ 10, maybe 20 people. They're small operations. And it makes the owners so used to, I have to be the plumber, I have to be the mechanic, I have to be able to fix the fridge, I have to be able to cook, I have to be able to bartend, that we get really good at plugging holes that exist, but don't take the time to say, why did that hole exist? What is the actual underlying problem?
Yep, exactly. Or is there a member of my staff that's really good at plumbing that can come and help me out? which is something again the Hawksmoor do. They find the interest and the skill set of the people,
Hmm.
and they promote them up through the business. Because if you're great at plumbing and the bar owner comes and says, "Hey, I need some help. Can you help me with this?" And you go, yeah, of course, I'd love to help. A lot of people, they want to indulge in their passions.
Hmm.
And I think, I don't know. And also like if you're a small bar owner, it's your dream, right? For most
Hmm.
people, it's their dream to own a bar. Something that they've really aspired to. So surely you'd want to make it fun. Surely, like when you're at work, you'd want to surround yourself with people that want you to be there, that you enjoy the company of, and when you're there, you're having fun and you feel like a good time.
Hmm.
My wife is a sommelier in a local venue in town, which I won't name. But when the owner of the venue comes in, all of the staff are just like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, this is going to be awful," and they all hate him being there. And I'm like, why would you? Why do you even have the business in the first place if you make your staff feel so terrible about being there? And when you go in, your staff are so on edge and miserable about you being there that no one's having a good time.
Right. And
It makes no
and
sense to me.
because it can't, right? I mean,
No.
there's no way that we can talk about why we have toxic work cultures. We can talk about how the industry has promoted those for years,
Hmm.
but I cannot think of a single way that you can justify
No.
some of the toxic work cultures that we just accept as being normal.
No. Even like from all sides, whether it's just how you treat humans and being a good human, even if you don't give a flying crap about that, surely the financials of it, the
Right.
black and white numbers on the page show you that investing in your staff is the best investment you can make. And it doesn't have to cost anything, right? Because you can take money from another cost center and invest it in your staff, right? You go like, oh, we change our menu, like I work in bars, right? So everyone's go, oh, we change our menu every 3 months.
Hmm.
Great. Change your menu every 6 months. And take that money that you would have invested in menu development and spend it on your staff. Not a single one
Well,
of your customers will care that you only change your menu twice a year instead of 4 times a year. But your customers will care that your staff are much happier and having a better time, giving a better customer experience.
and I think something that is worth pointing out in that part of the cost with Healthy Hospo, you guys have a lot of, I know you do in-person training, but you also have a lot of online courses that are available.
Hmm. Yes.
And those online courses tend to actually not be very expensive. I know you have a whole set of them that is for free for
Yep.
specifically targeted towards bartenders and people that work in the industry to help them out.
Hmm.
But then most of them, I think, were right around £5. So,
Yes, we've just changed our pricing structure. So all the foundation courses we do we've made more free to access now. And those cover a variety of topics from sleep to nutrition to mental fitness to exercise, to burnout and a variety of other subjects. And then we have a series of expert level courses which are written by kind of world-renowned experts on a number of subjects, and those are £5 for the course. So great value, I think, at least. Um,
absolutely.
and what when it's free, why would you not want your staff to get involved in them? We have them online. We also have them in app format, so on your Apple phone, your iPhone, or your Android phone. Um,
Do you have many people that work those into their training programs?
Not enough,
Okay.
I would say, not enough. And I
Because
wish that we would get more, because they're a great tool, right? We can come and do in-person trainings, and we do a lot of in-person trainings, and they're very impactful for the people who are in the room. But as you know, in an operations-focused industry, it's very hard to get everyone in the room, and you can't close the bar
absolutely.
in the middle of service. Go, excuse me, we're just gonna do a training on sleep for an hour. Just entertain yourselves, customers, while we're gonna do a training. So having those digital formats allows us to reach many more people. and also act as a kind of a resource that people can tap into at any time. It's always there. Don't just have to wait until we turn up to run a course. You can kind of constantly, maybe you came to a course and then that information is all online for you still to access.
So what, for everyone that's listening, what Tim just said is you should work his programs into your induction program when you onboard people.
Absolutely.
Set them up for success and make sure that you're cutting off the bad habits and the bad health at the beginning. Because, I think it's been a while since I've been on the bartending side of things, right? And kind of in that employee position. But I know personally, if I went into a job and they said, okay, here's your training, but as part of your induction, as part of your training, we're going to help you with some things that are great for your health and force you to look at some of this stuff, I would feel better about working there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Because they show they care. It's all about that culture that we've been talking about.
Yeah. And my business partner, Avallen, always says, she has a great quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have the best laid plans in the world for how your menus are laid out and the seating plan in your restaurant and making sure the service is perfect. But if your culture sucks, your business will fail.
Absolutely.
So, and one of my favorite stories kind of coming out of the COVID era was all the stuff that 11 Madison Avenue did, when the restaurant was closed and how they asked themselves, we are a restaurant for the rich. It's incredibly expensive to come to this restaurant. But how, as a restaurant during this time when no one can come to our restaurant, how can we give back to our community? And they kept all their staff on board, and then they created the community kitchen, and they were delivering Michelin star quality food, like world best restaurant quality food to homeless people across New York, people attending food banks. And it's something they continue to do to this day, and that doesn't do anything, like doesn't bring any money into the business. But from a culture perspective, like chefs going home at the end of a shift, like knowing they've done something, they've contributed positively to society, that they've impacted people's lives that are much worse off than them, rather than just making food for the wealthy. And that's a kind of a culture that I think makes a lot of people aspire to want to go and work there, and once they're working there, to stay there.
Well, it's the kind of culture that at the end of the day also make sure that your guests are getting the best experience.
Yeah,
that your team is getting the best experience.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a great, guest experience is key among everything.
Yep.
But to have a great guest experience, that team experience has to be in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
One feeds the other.
Yeah, and it's taking that old adage of the customer is always right and saying no, because that simple phrase has led a lot of poor managers in our industry to put the customer on a pedestal and criticize staff and not make staff feel valued by the company. When its truth is the customer is sometimes right, but you should always back your staff, because the customer will go, and the customer that has an issue and is arguing and belittling staff and complaining, chances are that customer will never come back to your business again, ever.
Right.
But your staff member will come back tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. And so you want to make sure that they feel supported. Maybe they're right. They're not always right either. I'm not saying the staff member is always right, but they need to feel supported. So I think flipping that narrative on its head and saying that the customer is not always right. And the customer's always, for some reason, when people walk into hospitality venues, a lot of people become entitled pricks.
They do.
Perfectly normal people will perfectly polite, normal, reasonable, friendly people. The way that they'll talk to service staff in a bar or a restaurant is so out of character. And I don't understand the psychology behind it. But I've seen it firsthand. I've had to tell friends and colleagues off before for their behavior in bars and restaurants. There's
Oh,
something
for
about the
sure.
psychology of when you're expecting service, the way you treat those people is different.
It is. But again, if you have the good team culture, if your team has the tools to be able to deal
Hmm.
with that, and they know not to take it personally, and they have a good mental health base
Yep.
position, you're never going to get rid of the asshole customer, right?
No.
That's one of the things in our industry that none of us like, but all of us have gotten very used to dealing with.
Hmm.
But when you have personally the tools to deal with that better,
Absolutely.
you can hopefully get the customer not to be an asshole. But if you can't, at least you survive the interaction.
Yeah, exactly. So we talk about mental fitness and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than using the term mental health, which is a term that's used a lot these days, but for us it kind of embodies things going wrong. So people kind
Mm-hmm.
of associate mental health with therapy and the illnesses that come along with mental health, whereas we say like let's reframe that phrase into mental fitness, and so it's about being mentally fit all of the time. So yeah, our approach is very preventative. So rather than waiting for shit to happen, let's make sure that shit doesn't happen in the first place. So sleep well,
Mm-hmm.
eat well, do some exercise, make sure you have a good circle of friends, that kind of stuff. None of it's rocket science, it's all very basic, but as they say, common sense is far from common.
That is
Um,
very true.
and then, we talk about resilience a lot, that, and one of the professionals that we work with, this amazing guy called Peter Milijev, with him, we teach people how to build what he calls a shit hit fan toolkit. Because at some point, the shit will hit the fan.
Right.
That is a 100% statement of fact. But it's all about what happens, or how do we cope when the shit hits the fan? What's our strategies for dealing with those moments, and how do we resolve them? And that, I think, is a really important part of what we do, is building that resilience. Because as you say, you will have the arsehole customer come in, but it's how do
Yeah.
you deal with that arsehole customer? So often, you've worked in the industry, like post shift, everyone is just bitching about those arsehole customers.
Oh yeah.
And everyone's forgotten the great customers that have come in that have been like really complimentary and really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But that one customer that came in that said some shit words or treated their staff like, that's what we focus on. So it's, how do we build that resilience toolkit to make sure that you're not taking it home from work with you and letting it impact your sleep and your mental well-being.
Well, and that's huge, because the
Yeah.
more resilient all of us can be in this industry, the better off we are, because there's a lot getting thrown at us day in and
Absolutely.
day out.
Exactly, and it's how to the communication strategies to diffuse those moments as well are really important,
Mm-hmm.
rather than let them escalate. Which I don't. Again, how often are frontline staff in our industry taught communication skills? We
Right.
just expect everybody to be great communicators, when a lot of people in our industry are not great communicators, because they found their way into hospitality because it's a low bar of entry. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often the only qualifications that you need, that you have 2 arms and 2 legs.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even need 2 arms or 2 legs. When you're 1 arm or 1 leg, will still get
When
your
I
job.
And the other thing too is that a lot of us in this industry, we got into it when we were 13, 14 as a first
Yeah.
job. And I don't know. I mean, I can tell you right now, when I first started in the restaurant business, I did not intend to stay in the restaurant and bar
No.
business,
No. Same.
right? Most of us, we did it as a
Yeah.
thing, and then suddenly we were like trapped.
Yeah.
And so it's, but it's partially because it's a wonderful industry.
Probably is. Yeah.
But to your point, that also doesn't mean that we necessarily have the same, I hate to say it this way, but it's true, the same educational base that exists in a lot of other industries. We don't have the same tools. We're just kind of thrown in and we grow through it and
Absolutely.
figure it
Yeah.
out for ourselves as we go.
Yeah. And I think one of the great parts of industry is that we do have a very diverse staffing set, and it does have that low barrier entry. So people from all cultures and all backgrounds and all education levels can come in and find a home within our industry. And I think that's a wonderful thing. But from a training perspective, we don't have a lot of training. And as I said before, a lot of that, it's because it's reliant on brands, or any training that is independent often is based on technical skills.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true.
Let's teach a bartender how to make a great martini, how to make a Manhattan, how to shake, cut, do all those skills. Why are we not teaching bartenders how to talk to people? It's a far more important part of their job.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's wonderful to see with Healthy Hospo that you're giving people the tools to be able to work through everything in the industry.
Yeah.
Because that is really so important. And it's, like when we started this conversation, it's something we don't do enough. And it needs more attention, and it needs more owners, like we talked about with the cost of replacing people and the turnover that we face. More folks need to be focused on it and willing to invest in it, because you do have a better customer environment. You take care of your guests better when you do those things.
Yeah, and as a bar owner, you're going to make more money and your costs will be lower. Your margins will increase, so why the hell wouldn't you do it? It literally is one of those like win-win-win scenarios. You win as a business owner, your staff win because they're having a better time at work, and your customers win because they get a better experience when they come to your bar. I'm like, who's not winning in this situation? The healthcare industry and the health insurance industry. And those are two very powerful industries in the US.
I can't argue that.
Yes.
I can't argue that. But on that note, actually, let's pivot a little bit, because one of the other things that you're big on is sustainability. And so it's also something in the industry that we hardly ever talk about.
Yep.
And you have really focused on sustainability through Avallen, which is your spirits company. And you're doing, for the life of me, can never pronounce that word right. Is it Calvados? Calvados. Okay. Which is a apple-based spirit. And you're doing it out of Normandy in a way that is very unique, and that it is really sustainable compared to how all other liquor in the world essentially is made.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, your goal is to be the most sustainable spirits company in the world.
That's the plan. We've certainly won enough awards to be able to justify it. Seeing as Grey Goose won one award for the best tasting vodka in the world, and they dined out on it ever since. I think that was like in 1999, and they continue to tell people they're the world's best tasting vodka.
Right.
So with Avallen, it was my lifelong. I grew up in the countryside, very close to nature. So for me, environmental protection has been extremely important my whole life. When you see something so beautiful around you, you want to protect it. So being able to take my experience from being behind the bar and my time at Diageo and put that into a brand with an incredible partner, and Stephanie Jordan, has been a dream come true. We didn't set out to make a Calvados. We set out to make the world's most sustainable drinks brand or spirits brand. But knowing that all alcohol, with the exception of Air Company vodka, which is made from captured CO2, all alcohol starts its life as agricultural product. Yet when we look at sustainability in the drinks industry, we mostly talk about what happens at the distillery and packaging. And we kind of ignore the agricultural impact. Unless you're a wine maker, wine industry really understands, because it's very connected to the vineyards and the terroir and the soil. And they understand that what happens in the soil and the state of the soil impacts the flavor of the final product. So we went back and we said, if we're going to be true to this mission, we've got to go right back to the start of alcoholic production. And it doesn't start at the distillery. It starts in the fields, the orchards, the vineyards, the plantations. And let's go back to that and ask the question, which we don't know if anyone else has asked, but what's the best ingredient to make alcohol from an environmental perspective? So let's forget category, just the kind of number one defining characteristic, because people go, I want to launch a rum, I want to launch a tequila, I want to make a gin, which then locks you into that raw material you're going to use. So let's find out the best raw material from an environmental perspective and let that research guide us to what we're going to make. So we looked at cereal grains, sugarcane, agave, grapes, and apples across 4 metrics of carbon emissions, biodiversity, water, and pesticide and fertilizer use. And the apples of Normandy came out on top in every single category. And then we were like, ooh, go make a Calvados, haven't we? There's a category of alcohol I need for any drinks. But within that, we saw a real opportunity to create a young, modern take on the category that's very much aimed at bartenders and mixed drinks. As a category, it's really kind of cornered itself into a digestif world. And people just don't drink like that anymore, you know.
Right.
Maybe like in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, that was, you know, a serious occasion. But the number of people that kind of after dinner go like, "Oh, I would like a neat spirit to follow my dinner," is diminishing.
Yes.
You know, people want to drink cocktails and spritzes and highballs, and so we wanted to make a liquid that was very much tailored for the cocktail scene, but really led the industry forward on sustainability, starting with the most sustainable raw material that we could possibly find.
And something I think that's interesting, talking on the raw material side with the apples, is the biodiversity you're getting in Normandy and how it's apples, but it's also wildflowers. And it's a lot of this is to help bees and bees survive, which is a huge issue that not enough people talk about in general is we're losing bees and we're losing pollinators, which is terrible for the environment. But you found a way to tie the booze to the apples, to the wildflowers, to the bees.
Without the bees, there's no apples.
Yeah.
So without the bees, there's no apples, there's no Avallen. So it's also a little bit selfish that we're protecting our business. But you're right. Like, have you ever been to Ohio?
Yeah.
Is it Ohio or Iowa where they have all of the corn?
Both of them, but Iowa is
famed for its corn, or as Donald Trump famously said, liquid, not gold. No, not liquid gold. And I'm like, pretty sure gold is just not liquid gold.
That's true too.
But you can drive to where they grow the corn, and I went to when I was with Bullet in Kentucky, and getting onto the back of the truck, and 360 degrees, you can only see 2 things, and that's corn and the road that you drove along. There's not a tree, there's not a bird, there's not an insect, it's just corn. And that is really unnatural, and it's really bad for our environment in so many ways. So when you come to the orchards in Normandy, because what makes them really great is not that they're an apple orchard per se, but it's that they're a traditional apple orchard. So apples can be grown and are grown in the US and across China in a monoculture kind of a fashion. So single species in a huge area, nothing in between, maybe some grass in between, and then pollinated by honeybees. The orchards in Normandy are very small. You'll have multiple species of apple within an orchard. There's a large distance between the rows of trees. So the reason for having multiple species in the large row is if one species of apple got infected, it wouldn't move across the entire orchard because the next species over would be a different species and it would be a significant distance away. So even if the disease did transfer, the chances are, because it was a different species, that it might be, it wouldn't be vulnerable to that disease as the other one was. Which is the risk that tequila faces all of the time because it's one genetic variety of agave. So if something happens to that genetic variety, the entire crop could be wiped out.
Right.
And then in between those rows, you've got wildflower meadows, grass and wildflowers, which is very important to help the health of the bees because we rely on wild bees. We're not bringing hives into the orchards.
Okay.
And then around the outside, you'll have hedgerows. And quite often you also have pear trees in the orchards as well. And those hedgerows will have different species like blackberries. You'll have different trees in there, maybe some hawthorn bushes. So again, it's just, it's not as biodiverse as a wild forest, but from a farming system, it is beautifully biodiverse and regenerative and all of the good things that we need from our agricultural system, rather than stripping the land from as much nutrients and life as possible and then replacing that with fossil fuel based fertilizers and pesticides, which then seeps into our water systems. Then our water becomes polluted, our rivers and oceans become dead zones, all in the service of making the fossil fuel industry as much money as possible.
Sure. And so I just think that's so cool because I love nature. I live out in the woods. I'm kind of a country guy myself. And it's, there's something so magical about natural environments and the way they work and the way that nature has worked for centuries to be able to interact with each other.
Yep.
Right. Where every plant, every animal has a purpose, and being able to, for lack of a better word, capitalize on that, right? Because you are capitalizing on it. You are making money off of it. But at the same time, you're making a product and making money in a way that's not negatively impacting nature. And what's great to me is, to your earlier point, you're doing it from, the start of the agriculture through the end product. And one of the things on the end product that's really cool that I have not seen anyone else do, and you had mentioned there are a few other folks that do it, but getting away from glass bottles.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about that, what it's like, and also what's it like using a paper bottle behind a bar? Because I feel like a lot of people, you say paper bottle, they're just going to freak out. But what is that actual experience?
Sure. So I think let's be clear, single-use glass is the problem here. Single-use glass is the waste product or the environmental aspect that our industry doesn't really want to talk about. It's starting to slowly, thankfully, but I will argue that single-use glass is worse than single-use plastic. Yet we are all aware of the issues of single-use plastic. And I have this conversation often that, people talk about plastic in the oceans is the number one kind of topic that comes up. Yet plastic in our oceans is not even in the top 3 risk factors to our oceans. But the number one factor that our oceans are at risk of is climate change. So we can kind of move away from single-use plastic and take it all out of our oceans, but ignore climate change, and our oceans will still die. The vast majority of life in our oceans will die because we haven't impacted climate change. But if we tackle climate change first, we can then get to single-use plastic once our oceans are safe. And there's also an amazing number of people out there doing incredible work to remove plastic from our oceans. Whether it's the Ocean Cleanup Project or even Mother Nature, right? Mother Nature, there's microbes in the oceans that have now adapted to eating plastic. Nature is incredible and it will adapt beautifully. So, what I'm not saying is that single-use plastic isn't a problem. What I'm saying is that glass is worse because glass has an incredibly high embodied carbon footprint because we have to take sand and we have to take sand from beaches. So we're digging up our beaches to make glass bottles, and there's a staggering amount of glass bottles made every year. It's something like our industry makes like 9 bottles per person per year for everyone on the planet. There's some sort of I think it's like 70 billion single-use glass bottles just for the food and drink industry per year.
I believe it.
Which is 9 bottles per person per year, single use. That sand has to be melted down at incredibly high temperatures. And those furnaces at present are only able to be fired by fossil fuels. to coal or oil or gas. And then there's a high water content as well used to make those bottles. So not only is there a high carbon footprint, and it's, as a very rough calculation, it's a 1-to-1. So for like 1 pound of glass that you've made, you have 1 pound of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere through the production of that bottle.
Oh, wow.
But it goes beyond just the production of the bottle. So then a lot of people will say, yeah, but glass is infinitely recyclable. Technically it is. But there's very few 100% recycled glass bottles out there. Most will contain a percentage of glass bottle. And the ones that are super, super expensive and super white are complete virgin glass. But the recycling of glass is also incredibly energy intensive. So the savings that you're making from recycling the glass are very small. Maybe like 20% saving in energy costs. And our industry is incredibly wasteful. In fact, we've got more wasteful over time, as our society in general has become a very disposable society. And we just put stuff in the recycling or throw it in the bin rather than reuse it. And the spirits industry is the worst because we have the least circular systems available to us. So, looking at solutions that are either much more lower impact when it comes to single use, so for example, the paper bottle you just mentioned, or even better than that, looking at circular systems. Because the beer industry has had circular systems forever, and we're well used to seeing them, working with them, experiencing them in kegs. A brewery doesn't throw the keg away once it's empty.
Right.
It'll take it back, clean it, refill it. That's a circular system. It's fantastic. But until very recently, until the launch of eco spirits, those circular systems didn't really exist in the industry. You might have like a local distillery, selling some bulk in a refillable solution to its local bars. But on a larger scale, that didn't really exist. So we work with a company called Eco Spirits on those circular systems as well. And then our paper bottle, which is really exciting and gets lots of attention. So to describe it simply, it's a bag-in bottle. So we're familiar with like wine and its bag-in-box, box wine. It's a similar concept to that. So you have a cardboard box that's in the shape of a bottle with a pouch on the inside that holds the liquid. The reason why this is good and better than something like a Tetra Pak, so we're used to going to the supermarket and getting our juice in a Tetra Pak, is that Tetra Paks are layers that are bonded, glued together, which makes it very, very difficult to recycle them. Because you've got to be able to recycle it, you've got to unbond all of those layers to get the separate materials out, which is resource and time consuming to recycle. So that's why almost all Tetra Pak is not recyclable. Our bottle is simply a cardboard shell with a pouch suspended on the inside. So you can separate the two once it's finished. The cardboard goes in your cardboard recycling as if it was just a piece of paper, some paper. And then the pouch goes in your plastic recycling. So both elements are recyclable. And then from a production perspective, the bottle only weighs 80 grams.
Okay.
So it's insanely light. And when bartenders pick it up for the first time, they're like, oh, is this half full? And you're like, nope, that's an unopened bottle. And everyone's like, what? Can't believe that. It's fun to see bartenders freak out for that. But it's got 1/6 of the embodied carbon from production and 1/5 of the water footprint of a single-use glass bottle.
Oh, wow.
So from a recycling perspective, it's much better. From a production perspective, it's much better. You also have slightly lower transportation emissions because the bottle is a fraction. Most glass bottles will be 500 grams and above. We have a very light glass bottle for us, which is 450 grams, but that's very much on the light end of glass bottles for spirits. And there are some glass bottles out there that hold spirits that are well over 1 kilogram. But the paper bottle weighs 80 grams. And then beyond that, you can have loads of fun with the design and packaging because you've got the entire bottle to play with. So you're not just limited to the design on the stickers, maybe 2 or 3 stickers on the bottle. You can play with the whole bottle and have a lot of fun with it.
And if for anyone listening to this, go look up Avallen and look at their bottles, because they're, to Tim's point, the bottle designs themselves are very cool.
Thank you.
And it does definitely have a different feel to it,
Hmm.
just looking at it, than a glass bottle, because to your point, it's printed all around, but it definitely would make it a showstopper behind a bar, right? It's a
Yeah,
bottle that your
absolutely.
eyes would be drawn to, for sure.
Absolutely. And then just to answer the second part of your question.
Mhm.
So, so if you have it in the well and you're picking up by the neck all the time, it's not going to last very long because the weak point of the bottle is the neck. It's
Sure.
not the fact that it gets wet because it holds up really well actually against some water. But the neck gets a bit wibbly wobbly. But where we found it's really good is A, it has great standout on the shelf. People are like, oh, what's that
Hmm.
bottle? But for bars, any bar that batches cocktails, using the paper bottle with Avalon is a massive advantage because once you've emptied it, it just breaks down into a flat piece of cardboard and a very
Hmm.
small pouch. So the volume of the waste is extremely small. Whereas if you're using normal glass bottles,
Right.
you are getting a bin full of glass bottles, unless you have on
Hmm.
site a machine to grind them down into sand, which I know Maker's Mark did for a few bars for a while, but I don't know any bars that have those machines anymore. So from a batching perspective, it's actually really, really good. So we're kind of trying to say to bars now, like if you don't have the eco spirits, which is the best solution for batching, take our paper bottle because it's significantly better from a waste perspective for your venue.
Hmm.
And you've worked in bars, you know the issues that bars have with the waste generation because brands
Oh
just
yeah.
we just push the responsibility of the waste down onto the bar, and we go like, yeah, you buy our stuff, but we're not responsible for the waste. That's
Hmm.
your problem now. You know, where do you put the bins, and then the noise at night? You know, especially in cities now, you're not allowed to empty your bins at night because they're so noisy.
Hmm.
You don't have any of these problems with the cardboard bottle.
Well, and especially I feel like it's unfortunately in the U.S. How recycling works varies state to state, county to county, area to
Yeah.
area, right? And I know, like, my bar was in Indianapolis, but my options for recycling were basically zero.
Hmm.
I was left in a position I could have thrown everything in the back of my truck and driven it somewhere because I
Uh-huh.
didn't have a spot to pay for even a recycling bin. So
Crazy.
everything went into the trash, not necessarily because we wanted to, but just because that was the only real conceivable way to do
Hmm.
it at the volume that we were doing.
Yep. And
And to
very,
your point, I don't know how many beer bottles I threw away.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of
there's a
thousands.
thousand. Yeah.
Yeah. And
You imagine
having something
yeah.
that would
And
be
each one of
better would
those
be
has
better.
got like, each one of those beer bottles has got maybe like 250 grams of CO2 embodied in its
Mm-hmm.
production. And then if it gets recycled, more CO2. I know that some states, a perishingly small number have bottle return schemes,
Yep.
but it's very full. I know that Bernie Sanders was a big advocate for that. And bottle return schemes
He
are amazing
was.
because if
Yeah.
you can use the bottles again, and especially with beer, it's a much simpler process. I remember when I used to run bars in New Zealand, some of it, New Zealand famously has like 750 ml beers.
Okay.
We call them Tallies. And they're very kind of like Kiwi brands. They're loved and they've been around forever. It's things like Lion Red and Waikato Draft. But those bottles would come, we were a super high-end cocktail bar, but we would
Mm-hmm.
order them because it was the fun, playful beers that we had, and people loved it, right? They would come in for $25 Manhattan, and then they would have like a $4 like giant beer next to it, and people loved it.
Yeah.
Those bottles were really cool. So on the bottom of the bottle, they would have like little glass notches, and on a virgin bottle there would be 10 of them. And then we would keep the bottles with the crate, and we'd keep the crates. And then when we get our beer delivery, they would take the bottles away.
Mm-hmm.
And every time a bottle would go back to the brewery and get used, cleaned and be used again, they would just sand off one of the notches at the bottom of the bottle.
Okay.
So those bottles were used 11 times in total. And that is just a really simple way. And every time you're using it, you're reducing the footprint. And also you can kind of you get the bottle and you'd be like, oh, there's only one notch left on this bottle. I wonder who else has drunk from this bottle.
Right.
Maybe someone famous, maybe Margot Robbie drank from this bottle, or Leonardo DiCaprio or someone, and it's just a really good way that the beer industry is so far ahead of spirits when it comes to sustainability from its packaging perspective, from beer kegs or to reusing bottles. And we do have the systems, we can do it if we want to. We just choose to throw things away and pass responsibility onto someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That is for sure true. Now with Avallen, I know from your website, one of the other things that you talk about that I want to touch on real quick, because I think it's an interesting conversation, is the concept of greenwashing.
Ooh, yeah.
And a lot of companies out there making things seem greener than they actually are, versus your approach, which is just, this is what we do and it's as green as it can be.
Yeah. Be transparent, it's words like green and recyclable. If I ever see the word recyclable again, or a company claiming that their products are recyclable. So unfortunately, sustainability has become like a buzzword for marketing and a key trend. So every brand wants to be seen to be sustainable because they'll get criticized if they're not, right? And there's been very little legislation and regulation around any of these terms or what companies do. So companies have just said all sorts of things. I saw a Green Awards the other day where Coca-Cola won an award for their sustainability. Like, they are the single biggest producer of single-use plastic bottles in the world. And they have all of the resources in the world to change and make a positive impact. And yet they choose to do precious little with it. And we see all sorts of terms, brands claiming to be sustainable, yet using industrial monocrops, relying on pesticides and fertilizers, lying about their products. Because in our industry, we have to tell a frighteningly small amount of information about our product to the end user of the product. Like, I own a drinks brand, so I'm aware of the legislation and the legal requirements that we have to put on our bottle, the minimum legal requirements. We don't really have to say anything at all, apart from the category it is, its ABV, where it's made. Don't have to tell people what it's made from.
Right.
Don't have to tell people the ingredients in there. Don't have to tell people anything about its environmental. Don't have to tell people how to deal with the waste, the sustainability, how it's made. So for us, we really wanted to set a gold standard of, this is as good as you can be. And this is where everyone should aim for. I think when you have a company that's at the top, it gives the other companies something to aim for. Like, Patagonia are probably the archetypal top of the tree company, that every company, no matter what industry, wants to be more like Patagonia. And we're trying to be that for the drinks industry. So it's about going beyond minimum legislation, avoiding all of these terms that we know are green. Like, I'm sure that the brand managers and marketeers and the people that do all this greenwashing, they know that they're greenwashing. Because they're smart people, right? When you're not being 100% transparent or truthful about something, or you're using language to be a bit murky about your product. And we try and go above and beyond. So there's some, there is new legislation coming in Europe at least. I'm not sure what it's like in the US. That's putting legislation in place to try and stop some of the greenwashing terms. So no, you won't be able to get away with, a bottle is 100% recyclable. And you're like, that's just a bland statement. You won't be able to use terms like eco-friendly and other stuff like this. And you won't be able to use terms like kind of net zero or climate positive without publishing your strategies or publishing the data. For us, we call ourselves climate positive because through our production process, we remove more CO2 from the atmosphere than we produce. But we publish all of that data. You can go on our website. You can find all of our life cycle analysis, all of the calculations from the liquid to the bottle to the packaging, also to the transportation, everything that we say about is published online. Our B Corp scores, all of our donations to charitable organizations is all public for everyone to see. And we don't hide it away. We make it front and center. So you might go on our
Right.
website and you might go like, oh, that's a pretty website. I just want to learn about some drinks and find some recipes. That's great. But you might want to go in there and do a deep dive. And so you can kind of click through all the links and you can find all that information on there. And we're trying to be very transparent. We're the first brand that we know of that's put all of our environmental information on the back of the label. So you can find our carbon footprint, our water footprint, the ingredients that we're made from on the label, and going above and beyond just minimum legislation to try and set a gold standard. We're not perfect. We make a lot of mistakes, and there's lots of stuff that, if we had more money, I would like to invest further in, and hopefully down the line, we will be able to invest further into those things. But, for the size of company we are, the budget, we're trying to do the best that we can and be as transparent as possible about both the good things that we do, but also the things that we're not so good at and the areas that we have to improve.
Well, and for everybody listening, you should go check out the website because A, it's a cool
Thank
product, but B, to your point, there's way more information on there than you would see on almost any other website. It's the difference between most spirits companies. I feel like you go to their website and it's like, oh, this is our story. We get corn from here and we get barley from here and we make this, and then it's cool. Where your story goes way more in depth about the actual production process, but also the impact of that and how it works and why you do the things you do. So if anyone wants a good example of what a sustainable spirits company looks like, that's the website to check out, because it's totally different information-wise than what you see in the rest of the market.
Thank you. One of my favorite parts is if you go through it, we hid all the bees. We didn't hide them, but there's bees all through the website because we do a lot of education around wild bees. So we don't just talk about honeybees. So we talk about bumblebees and mason bees and leafcutter bees. So you can click on the bees and you can find like a little bit of information about all those different bees. It's one of my favorite parts personally of the website.
I did not find that when I was on there earlier.
Yeah, so whenever you see a bee, just roll the cursor over the bee and a little bit of information will come up about the bee.
Oh, cool. Well, with that, we've talked for quite a while.
I did warn you.
You did, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
But with everything we've touched on, is there anything that we have not hit on that you think it's important for people to know regarding sustainability or health and hospitality? Any of the topics?
I think we've covered most of it. For anyone listening, what I would just really ask is just kind of really invest in your staff and your team within your business. It's the single most important investment you can make towards the success of your business. I love this industry to death, and it's given me so much. And I just really want to see businesses thrive. I want to see the industry thriving. I know it's been an incredibly difficult time through COVID and now a cost of living crisis and this kind of never-ending wealth gap between the ultra wealthy and everyone else. But hospitality is such, and sometimes I don't think we realize what an impactful and important sector it is to society. So invest in your staff, invest in your teams. It really is the best thing you can do for your business. And also list Avallen in your bar. It will make your bar more sustainable. To be more sustainable in a bar, the single easiest and most impactful thing that you can do is not switch your menu to being a vegan menu or install solar panels on the roof. It's just to buy sustainable products. So do some research, buy sustainable products. The easiest and most impactful way you can improve the environmental footprint of your business.
Well, I think those are two great notes to kind of wrap us up. For everybody that's listening, though, in the show notes, we will put links for Healthy Hospo. We will put links for Avallen. Is there any other contact information or anything that you want people to have as far as getting a hold of you?
That's all there. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Ginger Bitters. But I'm fairly easy to find online.
Well, cool. So we'll make sure that's all linked in the show notes. If you want to learn more about Tim, get involved with using Healthy Hospos courses and things for your team, or are interested in expanding your spirit selection to include things that are more sustainable. But with that, folks, that'll wrap us up for today. Tim, thank you so much for being here. This has been, again, just a wonderful conversation.
It's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed our chats.
I have as well. It's great. So all of the insights from today, if you enjoyed them, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a review. As I mentioned, we'll have all of Tim's contact information for his various activities and ways that you can find all that in the show notes. If you have not, go on Facebook, join our Bar Business Nation Facebook group, because that's a great community we're trying to build of bar owners to help other bar owners and to really promote cooperation in our industry. Because in addition to health of our team, health of bar owners can be a little choppy sometimes. And so that's a community where we're trying to collaborate and get people together to help that. And again, all those links will be in the show notes. So with that, guys, until next time, I hope everybody has a great day, and we will talk again later.